The cost of living crisis is not over. You know that. Price pressures at the supermarket with the mortgage and with power prices and everything else. But while you know that, the Albanese Labor government and its smug treasurer, Jim Chalmers, have been telling us for month after month that they're on top of it and that inflation is under control.
Well, today's inflation numbers are outstanding. There's no two ways about it. They are a powerful demonstration of the progress that Australians have made together in the fight against inflation. We have got these absolutely outstanding inflation numbers today. Monthly inflation is below the Reserve Bank's target band. It actually has a 1 in front of it in these numbers today, Mr Speaker. So I hope they keep asking me about the inflation data today, because the inflation data today was very, very encouraging.
No more. The trouble is that the numbers have turned bad for Chalmers today. Reality caught up with the political spin when inflation jumped above the target range to 3.2%, or just on the top of the target if you want to talk core inflation. It's the highest quarterly jump for 2 years, and it's a higher increase than the Reserve Bank governor said yesterday would represent a material miss. Yeah, this was a material miss in economic management, and it means that when the Reserve Bank board meets on Melbourne Cup Day next week, homeowners are now almost certain to miss out on the dividend of another rate cut. In fact, rate cuts might be out of the question for a while yet. So today, at least for a moment or two, the Treasurer wasn't quite so smug.
Even with the very substantial and very sustained progress that we've made together on inflation, even with the progress that we've made on real wages, even with the progress we've made in the economy more broadly, a lot of Australians are still under pressure. I've acknowledged that.
Incredibly, after all its promises about the cost of living and interest rates and cutting power bills by $275 a year, the Treasurer's main argument now, well into his second term in power, is that it would all be worse under the coalition.
The point I'm making is this. There are no shortage of challenges in our economy. That's why we're rolling out responsible cost of living relief and strengthening Medicare to help where we responsibly can the Australians who are still facing cost of living pressure. Under those opposite, things were much worse, and if they'd won their last election, things would have been much worse still.
The trouble is that on two main counts, the inflation problem can be traced directly back to Labor's policies. First, inflation's being fuelled by unprecedented levels of government spending, as the opposition pointed out.
Given government spending is running 4 times faster than the economy, with the highest level of spending outside of recession in nearly 40 years, keeping interest rates higher for longer, will the Treasurer now concede it is time to stop Labor's spending spree?
And true to form, instead of promising to get spending under control, Chalmers switched to the usual Labor scare campaigns.
When those opposite talk about spending restraint, what they mean is coming after pensions again, like they did in 2014. They mean come after Medicare again like they did in 2014.
Yeah, so that's the spending argument. Believe me, we'll hear that on repeat for years to come. But the other key driving factor, the factor that's driving inflation upwards, is another long-running issue: electricity prices. Here's Ross Greenwood explaining earlier.
Part of this is the state governments really taking off subsidies for electricity, and so that led to an annual increase in electricity prices across the country of 23.6%, the quarterly increase at 9%. But even if they had taken all of those subsidies away and really they hadn't had that impact on energy prices, electricity prices in the past 12 months would have been up by 5.9% anyway, which is well outside where general inflation is running in Australia. So what that says is it still is about energy prices, which the government seemingly can't control, which therefore is also now having an impact on the future of interest rates as well.
Yeah, power prices continue to be driven upwards, and when the rebates come off, the federal rebates, there's an additional spike in inflation. Even Chalmers admits that's a major factor in this inflation spike. because those state rebates have come off. This is something I warned about last year when Chalmers and Albanese announced their electricity rebates. The big trick of this budget, the attempted con, is a huge gamble. Labor is hoping that the $300 per household power rebate, money paid directly to your electricity provider to keep your bill lower, will trigger an artificial reduction in inflation, push inflation down with taxpayers' money. And they think that that might trick the Reserve Bank into lowering rates. Now, surely this is unlikely because the bank knows that this doesn't do anything about the underlying cause of high electricity prices, and it knows that when the rebate cuts out, then that cost is going to go straight back onto consumers. Yeah, after the election. And that's where we are now. Some of the state's subsidies have come off, pushing inflation up now, as you just heard, but there's still the federal rebates in the system. So when they come off at the end of the year, there'll be another hit to inflation. You'll get hit by higher electricity costs and inflation will spike again. And again, that'll help keep interest rates higher for longer. All the while, the real problem, the underlying cause, the increasing cost of electricity, is just not being tackled. In fact, they're making it worse, which is why we saw the aluminium smelter Tomago yesterday reveal that it's considering closure because of crippling power prices.
We are absolutely committed to listening and acting for Australian manufacturers. Every day we get up and fight to support manufacturers, and that's what we're doing right now, fighting to keep Tomago open.
Yeah, fighting to keep Tomago open. What, by driving up energy prices and undercutting electricity reliability? That's the problem the smelter faces. You think Labor would join the dots. The pressure on households, the pressure on industry, the pressure on business, the pressure on inflation, and the resultant pressure on interest rates can all be attributed in large part to the energy crisis. The way the renewables push is driving up electricity prices. But instead of tackling the dilemma, the Climate and Energy Minister thinks none of this matters to mainstream Australia, and he chooses to attack Sky News instead.
They're about storing renewable energy for after dark. They're about appeasing Sky after dark, Mr. Speaker. We're about building policies to build the nation. They're about policies to beat one nation. We're about expert reports. They're about the Bull report. We care about credibility. They care about credulity.
Yeah, the way he's going, no one will be able to watch Sky After Dark. We'll all be sitting in the dark at home trying to read by candlelight. So apparently it's Sky News After Dark, and even here at dusk as well, that's out of touch with the energy needs and concerns of the nation, not Chris Bowen. I wonder what the people of his electorate of McMahon think about their power bills. Perhaps they should let him know. The trouble with this kind of arrogance is that it means Labor is deaf to the reality. And it's going ahead now and just doubling down.
We're getting on with a job. We're fighting hard to get energy prices down, unlike those who cheer when manufacturers go overseas, who had 23 policies around energy, who are intent on fighting climate wars instead of getting on the job of supporting manufacturers.
In other words, they're going to keep doing what they've been doing and hope for a different result. That is the very definition of madness.